Okay, Charmaine, can you please start the meeting?
Absolutely. I'll give you a countdown starting from 5. The 2 and the 1 will be silent, and then you may proceed. Have a great call.
Thank you.
5, 4, 3.
Okay, we'll call the meeting to order. We are starting the meeting a little bit late because of our previous meeting ran a little bit longer than expected. With that being said, I'll have the clerk call the roll.
Taylor?
Here.
Jay?
Here.
Jeff?
Here.
Bob?
Here.
Dave?
Here.
Chelsea?
Here.
Mark?
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a full assembly this evening for the meeting. 3 of us are in attendance in the assembly chambers with the clerk. Member Norheim, Member Lynn, and myself. It is now time for the voluntary Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Justice for all.
Okay, item 3 on today's agenda is approval of minutes from previous meetings. There are none listed this evening. Is there any amendments to the meeting agenda this evening? And if not, I would entertain a motion to approve as presented.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, the only thing I'd like to add to the agenda is a discussion about bears, I guess, under 17, maybe B.
Okay. Please remind Ms. Clerk Thompson not to forget that when we get there. Is there any other amendments? If none, I'd entertain a motion.
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Member Tremblay.
Thank you. I'd like an amendment after the bears for Borough Assembly partisanship policy, I guess.
Borough Assembly partisanship policies?
Yeah, it was a question brought up by a member of the public during today's radio call-in, and I said I'd bring it up.
Okay.
So I guess,
so we'll add that.
Yeah.
Yes, that would be under 17C. Yes, so 17C. So please remind me of that as well, Clerk Thompson. With that being said, I'd entertain a motion to approve tonight's meeting agenda as amended. So moved.
So moved.
Second.
A motion been made by Member Lynn, seconded by Member Norheim. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Okay, we'll move forward as amended. There are no public hearings. There are no bid awards. So that brings us to item 7, which is persons to be heard related to agenda items. Is there anybody in the queue, Clerk Thompson?
Yes, there is, I believe. One moment. Sorry, I've got 2 mouses here I'm working with. Okay.
And if you would just have the
Yes.
Charmaine.
Charmaine, if you could please unmute Kathy O'Rear.
Her line is open.
Okay, you're coming in well. I'd just like to remind everybody tonight that's testifying we have a 5-minute limit. Hello? Kathy O'Rear.
Hi, am I supposed to talk now?
Yes, you've got the floor.
Hi, Mr. Mayor and Assembly members. I'm just here to speak on behalf of item number 15D if anyone has any questions. Other than that, that's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else in the queue, Clerk Thompson?
Let's see. Yes, Charmaine, please unmute Dana Tinas.
Her line is now open. Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, you're very clear. You have 5 minutes. Please start your presentation.
Great. Okay. Thank you, members of the Assembly. I have 3 questions for the Assembly tonight. Number 1, what is the emergency we are facing? Number 2, is there a quota system for the hospital or clinic to try to reach a certain number of tests per day or week? Number 3, how much money does Petersburg receive for each test? I and a lot of others cannot help but suspect that the state of emergency is an ongoing spigot for revenue. Today there is a request on the agenda for an extension to the Emergency Operations Center up at the airport. I'm sure that request will go through as it has dollars attached to it. I read that they are training employees at a cost of $50 an hour, but their employees are not being well trained. I'm wondering if perhaps they have a quota system. Case in point, a family member flew down from Palma last Thursday and was surprised upon leaving the plane that 2 women demanded she receive a test. She informed them that she was coming from Anchorage, but they still insisted she needed a test. She went along with it as she was unsure what to do. She was given a swab, told to swab herself, then she was allowed to go on her way with the assurance she would receive her test results in 7 days. And I'm thinking, if there was a real danger here instead of just an epidemic of testing, that family member could have been Typhoid Mary for all the good this system would do in the case of a real pandemic. And I'm thinking, what the heck, do they have a quota? Are they receiving money from the state or the federal government for each test they administer? A fisherman from up north told my husband and me that a doctor in Anchorage assures him that there is a payment for every test, more for a positive test. He said he was told it was $1,700, though he could not give us a source. So why was my family member bullied into getting a test? How much money is involved with each test, negative or positive? It's hard to believe anyone's safety is the bottom line here. Instead, it seems like a continuation of a gravy train. So again, my 3 questions I would like the Assembly to answer. Number 1, what is the emergency we are facing? Number 2, is there a quota system for the hospital or clinic? Number 3, how much money does Petersburg receive for each test? Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation, Ms. Tinas. Member Mucci.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just wondering, since we have those questions, that maybe at the next meeting our instrument commander could address those or just have a written response, I guess, from Ms. Tinas. Thank you.
Yeah, probably. I was just thinking along those same lines. So, Clerk Thompson, is there anyone else in the queue for items related to tonight's agenda?
I see no other speakers for items related to tonight's agenda.
Okay, thank you. That moves us on to item 8 on today's agenda, and that's persons to be heard with issues unrelated to today's agenda. Is there anyone in the queue for that, Clerk Thompson?
Yes, there is.
Operator?
Yes. Sorry, I forgot her name.
Charmaine.
Charmaine. If you could,
Charmaine.
Thank you, Charmaine. If you could please unmute Nicole Hollingstad.
Her line is now open.
Thank
you so much.
You have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Jensen and Assembly members. I will not actually take up that much of your time. Some of you may know me because I am a hometown girl from Petersburg, still currently a property owner, and have very deep roots in the community with my grandmother Alma Wallen being one of the founders of Little Norway Festival, and of course my grandmother Amy Hollingstad being a staunch advocate for Native rights in the community for decades. I am just calling to thank the Assembly, first of all, for accepting public comments on the effort of Alaska Natives Without Land to continue their effort for legislation to place lands that were left out of ANCSA back into the hands of shareholders in those 5 communities who were overlooked. We very much appreciate that you keep this on your radar and that the information was available on the Assembly website, and that you are accepting comments. And my hope is that those comments can continue to come into you. I would ask if there is a firm deadline on this that is either already passed or is to be set. Could I please get that information this evening so I can let others know who are still interested in sending comments? The reason I'm speaking to you tonight is to let you know that there is no existing bill number on this legislation, and we will be more than happy to come back and speak before the Assembly with a full draft bill once that happens. We know these things take time. If it cannot be introduced in this session, we aren't going anywhere. We will start again with the next congressional session and continue with this battle. But the reason I speak to you this evening is just to please keep in mind, as this issue progresses, the economic development benefit to the community of Petersburg of having an ANCSA corporation stood up there in the city. And just imagine a burgeoning company at a time when economic development, stimulus, and opportunity in the city are going to be so important coming out of this pandemic. Not only will a Petersburg ANCSA corporation need, of course, a physical footprint, there will be jobs created to staff out this fledgling company. An ANCSA corporation, of course, would be a contributor to sales tax and is a viable enterprise that will need to hold events within the community. We are required to hold an annual meeting of our shareholders, and as many corporations do, we offer community meetings for shareholders. So I paint this picture all to say that the economic benefit to Petersburg can be significant as this legislation makes its way through the process. And I do want to remind Assembly members that within the materials that have been provided in the past is the identification of parcels of land and the assurance that access will still be available to that land. I know that has been an ongoing question, and I hope that you will turn to the resources you have in myself, in Miss Cecilia Tavalero, and the Alaska Natives Without Land Coalition and website for any further information you might need. Again, I'm thanking you for keeping this on your radar, and we look forward to speaking more with you once legislation has been introduced. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony tonight, Ms. Hollingstead. Clerk Thompson, is there anyone else in the queue under item 8?
Yes, it looks like we have one more caller. Charmaine, if you could please unmute Cecilia Tavalero, please.
Her line is now open.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Cecilia Tavalero, and I would like to thank Mayor Mark Jensen and the Assembly for taking time to hear us speak regarding this issue. As Nicole stated, we did come before the Assembly December 16th, 2019, and we had fully intended on setting aside time to come and make a full presentation regarding the history, and we had hoped to have a bill introduced already. However, it's not quite done. They're still tweaking regarding some parcels from some of the communities. As you know, the 5 communities are Ketchikan, Rainbow, Petersburg, Haines, and Teneke that were inadvertently left out of the Alaska Native Claims Settlement Act of 1971. And so we fully intend to come back because of COVID. Messed up quite a few things for a lot of people. But we hope to get some materials out and review them with you via audio and answer questions and just have the Assembly and possibly any of the community members in Petersburg to fully understand the history of how this whole thing came about. We're still fighting the battle, as Nicole stated, and we hope to be successful. It could be only a win-win situation like it is for many of the other communities that did receive their parcel of land, which in Southeast Alaska, because it's the Tongass National Forest, is only 23,040 acres. So other areas of the state received much more land. But we will be happy for what we can get and do some economic, cultural whatever way we can coexist in the Tongass National Forest without leaving any big footprints or changing things too much, because we understand it is an important place and it always has been to the people of Southeast, the original inhabitants. So thank you so much for taking time. I see you have a full agenda, and we look forward to getting on the agenda to give a full presentation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your presentation this evening. Is there anyone else in the queue, Clerk Thompson?
There is not, Mayor Jensen.
Okay, so that ends that part of the meeting. Persons to be heard unrelated to the agenda. There are no board, commission, and committee reports this evening. There is one item under the consent agenda, and is renewal of a Trident Seafoods Tidelands lease. I'd entertain a motion to approve the renewal of that lease.
So moved.
I'll take one of those as a second. So moved by Member Mucci, seconded by Member Stanton Greger. So any discussion on this? Just for the people listening, this is a lease from October 31st, 2020 through October 30th, 2025, and with an annual rate of $2,640. So that's what, it's just a renewal. So is there any other discussion? Clerk, call the roll.
Jay?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Chelsea?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Okay, the renewal of the lease to Trident Seafoods passes unanimously. And now it's time for report of other officers. We have a report from Incident Commander Hagerman with the Emergency Operations Center.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, you're very clear, Carl.
Thank you. Okay, just a few things to report today. I wanted to mention that the three positive cases from last week are the center of a wide-ranging contact tracing effort by the local public health office. The EOC is encouraging anyone that visited a local bar on October 9th or 10th to please call the local COVID hotline and be evaluated as potential close contact. If you are called, please answer all questions as clearly and truthfully as possible. At this time, the EOC is not aware of any further positive cases. I do know a number of people have been quarantined and isolated, but so far no word of another positive case, so that's good. In front of the Assembly tonight is an agenda item to consider the repeal of the local emergency declaration. I feel this is premature to consider. With currently active cases and contact tracing ongoing in Petersburg, standing down the local declaration is not appropriate, in my opinion. State and regional case counts continue to rise, with several days in the last couple weeks with new case counts being above 200. Petersburg has done well to keep our local situation under control, but we cannot let our guard down yet. The Assembly is also considering the approval of an extension of the airport screening and testing contract with the state of Alaska. There is a separate recommendation in your packet regarding that, so I won't go into the details. But the EOC is recommending to continue with the state contract and also with the memorandum of agreement with the medical center for the testing at the airport. The statewide emergency declaration is up for review on November 15th. We're trying to keep a very close eye on that. There's no telling if it will be extended or repealed, but some reports indicate that it could be extended on a month-by-month basis until the pandemic is waning and the state can repeal it in 2021. At a minimum, the State Emergency Operations Center has committed to complete traveler testing until the end of this year, and that is reflected in the contract for the airport testing that's in front of the Assembly tonight. Due to the rapid increase in community spread cases within the state of Alaska and the lack of a state-led restriction on intrastate travel, that's travel within the state of Alaska, the EOC is proposing to issue a health alert, which will strongly encourage all interstate travelers coming into Petersburg to test prior to their arrival or upon arrival in Petersburg. It would not be a requirement, but it is an advisable move in consideration of the outbreaks in our larger cities and in the state and in our region as well. I would plan to draft and issue an alert in the next week or so, which the Assembly may ratify or retract at the next meeting in November. The EOC recently helped to support the public health nurse and the medical center with the drive-through flu clinic last Saturday. The event was extremely well attended. The organization that went into that was all-encompassing, and the workers and volunteers for that event did an amazing job. The count that I received from the public health nurse was that 718 vaccinations were administered to the community, both through the drive-through operation and from home health vaccinations at the manor. Anyone that missed this opportunity to get a flu shot is still encouraged to contact the Joy Jansen Clinic and receive their flu shot at the clinic this year. The community mitigation plan is still coming together. I keep saying this, but it is. The IT department at the hospital is helping to develop a dashboard that will be the interface to the public on the local risk level and recommended mitigation actions. That is taking some time to put together. We want it to be fully cooked before we put it out to the public, and getting it squared away is just taking some time. The good news is that the risk in Petersburg remains to be low, even with the cases last week. We have not seen signs of a huge outbreak yet. Hopefully we don't. I'm knocking on wood right now. But we really hope to have a draft of that plan out very soon. And then lastly, the EOC did issue some recommended guidelines for the Halloween holiday, and it's hopeful that the community will celebrate in low-risk ways. Some recommendations being holding any parties outdoors, if at all, celebrating with members of your family and keeping social bubbles small, staying distance during any events, wearing face coverings, and providing treats to trick-or-treaters in a manner that reduces risk for everyone. That concludes my report, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions from Assembly members of Mr. Hagerman? Okay, seeing none. Next item under report of other officers is Manager Giesbrecht's performance evaluation process, and Clerk Thompson put a memo together, and I'll just read that. And Mayor Jensen and Vice Mayor Stanton Greger and Manager Giesbrecht will meet Wednesday, October 21st, 2020 to review and edit, if necessary, the combined performance evaluation. If a final document is decided upon at this meeting, I will bring the final performance evaluation before the Assembly in executive session at the November 2nd, 2020 Assembly meeting. And also attending that meeting tomorrow will be Clerk Thompson to keep notes and keep us in line. So with that being said, that brings us to the Mayor's report. I had nothing listed under the Mayor's report, but after listening to the Borough business today, one of the questions was, what openings do we have on boards and commissions? So I talked to the Clerk Thompson, and we have 2 vacant seats on the Planning Commission, 1 on the Harbor Board with one letter of interest from Don Spiegelmeyer. We'll address that this evening. And 3 Parks and Rec Board with 5 letters of interest on the agenda tonight. And so there's still 2 seats on the Public Safety Advisory Board. Interesting parties will serve until the October 2021 municipal election, and you can contact Clerk Thompson at the Borough website. So hang on one second. I had another note I made to myself here. I was going to either bring this up under communications or so I thought I'd just put it up on the Mayor's report. We received a letter from Alaska Airlines, and I asked the clerk to put this on the November 2nd agenda, and it's to take a position on Alaska Airlines' request for essential air service. So that will be an action item on the next meeting's agenda. And so they're sending a letter of request for all this, for us to support that. So with that being said, it's time for the manager's report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Big thank you to volunteer Andrew Barkson, who's putting in a great deal of time and effort to remove graffiti from the exterior of the library building. It was not coming off easily, and at some point we may have to replace some of the siding that was damaged in the graffiti work. Thank you to Chris Norez and the Rasmussen Foundation for contributing $1,500 to our Discovery Kits project. It's a new collection that the library is creating for checkout. We are youth, STEAM, science, technology, engineering, art, and math kits that will include tools and our toys with books for exploring a STEAM-concepted home. Friends of the Library held their annual general meeting on October 10th. They voted to donate $1,500 to upcoming library programs, Discovery Kit, KFSK radio show, and others. The library voted to release $1,500 in addition from the library's art education endowment for upcoming library programs, the YouTube ukulele class and writing workshop. All issues of the 2019 Petersburg pilot have been added to our online newspaper database. You can access that at petersburg.advantage/preservation.com or talk to the library and they can get you there. Passport services will be resuming Monday starting in November from 7:30 to 3 p.m. At the library, an appointment is required. Visitation and assisted living continues to go well. Residents continue to be thrilled to see their loved ones, and at this point, we have not had any positive tests, so everybody's very happy about that process. Putting together a trick-or-treat plan for assisted living. The elderly housing residents have decided not to participate this year. Details for that, I believe, are coming out this week. Assisted living and elderly housing residents will be participating, should participate in the food bank on Saturday, October 17th. CMC Home Health nurses went from apartment to apartment administering the shots to residents if we wanted them. Thanks for everybody involved in that. Water staff is servicing all the air release valves on the Cabin Creek transmission line prior to winter. Once that's done, we can pig the line and we'll after we receive approval from ADEC to operate the improvements. The South Bay Pump Station upgrade project has been pushed to spring due to continued issues with material suppliers associated with the pandemic. Power and light staff is working on repairing all street lights prior to Halloween, so if you see one that's out, please make sure and report that so we can get it fixed. The Harbor has been assisting stall owners on the PIA's Ward Subsidy Program. PIA is offering $500 to each Petersburg Harbor permanent stall holder. Forms can be picked up at the Harbor office. Streets crew repair failing sewer service on 7th Street. Thanks for all their work on getting that done. Hydrant winterization and other winter prep is underway last week and will continue over the next few weeks as we start to see colder weather. The snow removal RFP is being advertised to see if there's anybody interested in doing that this year. And we will have Northern Industrial Training. We'll be in Petersburg to conduct commercial driver's license testing for the Borough and PIA personnel October 16th. State of Alaska used to provide this service to do the budget cuts. They no longer send personnel to Petersburg. I'm not sure how many people took advantage of that, but it was nice to be able to get them down. The Solid Waste Rate Study Consultants, FCS Group, will be presenting the results of the rate study to the Assembly at their regular meeting on November 2nd. Our building maintenance staffs in all areas are working on winterizing facilities and prepping heating systems. We have Public Works back to our normal staffing levels, and we have reopened the Public Works lobby to the public with COVID protection measures in place for staff and customers. deadline for applicants for the Parks and Recreation Director has passed. Resumes will be screened, and we will be writing a list of written questions for the applicants to provide responses. Initial screening interviews will be conducted by a Parks and Rec Advisory Board and HR using Zoom. Advertisements have been placed to seek applicants for the deputy clerk's position. So very sorry to lose Danielle, and I won't keep telling her that until the day she leaves. The team of department heads has been evaluating the borough's website and meeting management software. Recommendations will be forthcoming at a future meeting on that we would like to say. PMA negotiations are continuing with meetings held using email. The proposed Zoom schedule has been submitted to the association for their review. I believe they have some changes to it, and we'll see how that turns out. We had a proposed meeting 3 days a week for 3 weeks to go through the contract and discuss potential changes. I'm not sure if they'll be able to meet that often, that quickly, but we'll find out here shortly. And the last thing, which is actually not on my report, but the verbal update. As many of you know, we had an event in the mechanical room at the pool Friday evening. It's the main breaker box control panel that operates the boilers. Got way too hot. It melted. It's a total loss. It got hot enough to trigger the fire sprinkler system and the fire alarms, which then in turn did their job and put any potential fire out. It's believed, and we put out a PSA regarding it, that event is what caused the brownouts that some people felt here in town. It was just such a big load coming on and off. It affected the entire SEPA system, and thanks to all of their work and safeguards that are in place, we kept the power off, or not going off, for everybody, with some exception, I think, in Ketchikan. We are working with the insurance agent, or broker, as well as talking to commercial electricians about what it's going to take to get started on repair at the pool. Unfortunately, it's probably a long haul. Most everything is probably going to be special built, and we just don't know in the time of COVID how long that stuff will take to get done. But I'll be talking to the insurance company tomorrow again to find out what the next steps are, and we'll keep the assembly informed on that. And that's it for my report.
Thank you, Manager Giesbrecht. Are there any questions for the manager? I have one.
Mr. Mayor?
Go ahead, Mr. Mucci.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just in relation or regards to the pool, as we move forward with this, will the insurance broker or whoever require somebody to come down and investigate how the fires or how the brownout or arcane thing started before we can, and then once, are we going to try and come up with a estimate on what it's going to cost to get these parts done and move forward, or is this going to be a slow, painful process? Thank you.
Mr. Giesbrecht?
Sure. Yes, sir. Thank you. Anytime you deal with an insurance company, it unfortunately can become slow and painful. The update I heard this afternoon was that there are things we could do to get the lights on and the air handlers working. That's no heat and would not be able to reopen the pool. Unfortunately, at least according to this electrician, it would not be repairs that could be reused on the full repair job. Their recommendation is that the insurance company hire an electrical engineer to actually come back in and redesign that entire room and decide exactly what has to be done. And until that's done, as there's no electrical contractor that will actually give us a potential cost. So it'll end up, if it goes that direction, and again, I have not had this conversation with the insurance people yet. That'll occur tomorrow. But if it goes that direction, it'll be treated like a project where an engineer comes in, designs it, draws up plans, and that's bid out, and we'll get somebody in here to actually do the work. As I mentioned earlier, some of this stuff is not special order, but it's stuff that they don't just have on the shelf. The statement made was that this has to be actually built. And as we've seen in many, many areas with COVID, production on equipment and like this is very sporadic. In some cases, you have to wait a long time just to get what you need to get things up and operational. So, not good news, but we'll know more every day that goes past.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. You know, Steve, is there a possibility in this discussion that we could get somebody from Juneau, like an electrical engineer from Juneau, to fly down? Or is this something that has to... I'm just trying to sort out, you know, as you know, there's lots of concern within the community about, you know, everybody is pretty excited to have the pool open here for a couple of weeks or months, and now this, and so people are pretty bummed out about this whole thing, and I know we can't move forward as fast as some people would like us to, but, you know, if there's electrical engineers in Juneau who have the expertise to look at this and kind of help us move along, I don't know what you're thinking, but I know we're all concerned about it. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, would you like me to respond?
Well, it just seems to me like you're going down the right course. We have to deal with the insurance company. They have to send an adjuster, and, you know, so... yeah, but you can respond if you have a different response than that.
Yeah, that's you're exactly correct, Mayor Johnson. It's a, you know, we've reached out to Juneau. Luckily, we had an electrical contractor here in town working at the airport, and our, you know, insurance company broker knew that and reached out to them. I've traded emails with them, and unfortunately, they're the ones you brought up and said, look, we wouldn't really even look at it without an electrical engineer involved to scope the entire project out for us. So, until I talk to the broker tomorrow, I don't know if, you know, there's a electrical engineer that they work with, if they're going to turn it over to us to find someone. I've got to talk to them, and we'll go from there. We can't. It'll be too expensive for us to take the hit by ourselves. We really, you know, want to take advantage of our very good insurance coverage, and that means it's going to take some time.
Thank you.
Okay, any other assembly members have questions of the manager on his report? If not, I have one question. Is there any other questions? Steve, in your report, you talked about pigging the Cabin Creek pipeline. And a while back, we were talking about putting a new port in, for the lack of the proper term, but an access point in the line so it would be easier. Has that been installed? Would we be able to take advantage of that?
Yeah, yes, it has been, Mr. Mayor. It is thanks to Public Works. I mean, Carlton was at Public Works and the water shaft that jointly got that put in place?
Yes, that's correct, Mr. Manager. The Public Works crew actually did the installation with the support from the Water Department.
Okay, great.
The holdup in using it right now, I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor. The holdup in using it right now is that the DEC needs to issue a certificate to operate the appurtenance, and we're still waiting on that issuance. So once we have that in hand, we'll move forward. It's going to be much, much easier to pig that line with that appurtenance in place.
Good. Thank you for the clarification. I was just curious. So, there are no items under unfinished business. The next item on the agenda is new business, but I would like to take a 5-minute break before we start with that. So we will reconvene at roughly 3 minutes to 7. The assembly back. We're here in the assembly chambers, the three of us.
Looks like everybody is still here.
I'm still on.
Okay.
I'm here.
Thank you. Jay and Jeff?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, perfect. We can get started again. Sorry about the delay. It was necessary. Now we're at new business, and the first item under new business is Resolution 2020-18. This is a resolution approving a sole source contract for design and installation of the multimedia audio system in the Borough Assembly Chambers, and this for the amount of $39,970. So I would entertain a motion to approve this sole source contract.
So moved. So moved.
Motion been made by Member Stanton Gregor, seconded by Member Mucci. Any discussion?
Yes, please, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, Member Lynn, then Member Stanton Gregor.
Okay, yes, I have a question for the manager on the contract submittal. Back on, I think it's page 3 of the contractor's submittal, he talks about the contractor shall provide the labor necessary to integrate the client's existing wireless microphone system into the new overall audio system. I assume, Steve, from that they've already done the inspection such that that would be a match. And I guess my question is, if it's not a match, would that then be an additional expense?
Through the mayor, as you know, they've been provided pictures, model numbers, and the layout for the room. And these are the wireless handheld microphones that we rarely use, but I wanted that in the contract that they would make sure that they would integrate those into whatever else they do.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other discussion on this proposed sole source contract?
Yes, please, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, I'm sorry, Member Stanton Gregor. Go ahead.
Oh, you're all good. Yeah, I think there's an important thing to approve. I know we've talked about the importance of getting a functional audio system there for the listening public, so the public can have proper engagement with us on the assembly and hear us clearly on the radio at home. So I'll be voting yes and look forward to getting this project underway.
Any other comments by assembly? I would just like to make a comment for the listening public that this expenditure will be paid for with the CARES Act funds, so it won't be a budgetary item. Well, it will be a budgetary item, but it won't be coming out of the general fund or anything like that. So if there's no other discussion, will the clerk call the roll?
Dave?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Chelsea?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, so that request passes unanimously, and that brings us to item B under new business, which is 20-409, assembly appointments. Every year after the election, we make appointments to various positions, from vice mayor to the representative on the PEDC board. And with, there's 8 different appointments here, and looking at the previous names in these positions, with vice mayor as member Stanton Gregor, Southeast Conference representatives, currently myself as the voting member, and Assembly member Mucci, Alaska Municipal League, currently Mayor Jensen and Assembly member Lynn. Liaison to the Harbor and Ports Advisory Board is member Mucci. Liaison to the Hospital Board is currently member Lynn. Liaison to the Public Safety Advisory Board is currently member Norheim. And elected official to the Emergency Planning Committee, currently Assembly member Mucci. And in the mayor's seat on the PEDC board is an appointment by the mayor, and that's just by the bylaws of PEDC. With that being said, and going on the rundown, I would like to appoint those same people for the same positions in this current year as in 2019. And if there's any objection to that, we could go down the list one by one, or pick one that would like to be changed. So that is my recommendation for appointments. So I'd entertain a motion to approve.
Mr. Mayor?
Member Mucci?
Mr. Mayor? Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I can't currently serve on the Southeast Conference this year.
Okay, so that would be one we could go over. Is there any other opposition?
Yes,
Is that Member Kinsinger?
yes, excuse me. Yes, it is, Mr. Mayor. I've been a member of Southeast Conference with my business for 25 years and currently serve as, and have served for many years as the Vice Chair of the Transportation Committee. So I'm already fully engaged in Southeast Conference and am attending all the meetings. That will continue to do so in the future. So I'd be more than willing to take that duty over from Assembly Member Mucci.
Okay, with that being said, if there's no objections to Member Kinsinger taking Member Mucci's place this year, I would still like to keep all the other appointments the same if there's if that is approved by the Assembly. So I'd entertain a motion to approve or change or whatever you'd like.
I would move this.
So moved.
Okay, motion been made by Member Mucci, seconded by Member Lynn. Any discussion? Clerk, call the roll.
Jeff?
Member Mucci?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Chelsea?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, so those appointments are in place. Thank you. Thank you. Next item under new business is C 20-410, termination of declaration of disaster emergency. I would entertain a motion to approve.
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's been made by Member Lynn, seconded by Member Norheim. Discussion.
Well,
Member Norheim.
so I put this on here just to get the assemblies, we got a new assembly on here and see if we're all still on board with there's an emergency going on. We've heard several times from several people who do not believe there is an emergency. And I just thought I'd throw it up here. And do we want to keep going with this or get rid of it? So that's about it.
Okay, any other input on this topic?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. It's something that...
Yeah, okay, Member Kinsinger.
Yes, I think that's a good point. We just had an election, and I made it pretty well known that I approved what the current administration had been doing, and I approved of the declaration of the disaster emergency, and so I will definitely not be supporting the termination of this disaster emergency.
Okay, thank you for your input. Is there any other input?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Mayor.
Okay, Member Tremblay, then Member Stanton-Gregor.
Thank you. I think this is a useful time to remind people what COVID looks like when it impacts the community. If anyone's familiar with Millinocket, Maine, it's a town a lot close to our population size on the coast. This summer, towards the end of August, there was a wedding with 62 people inside of them at a lake. And somebody attended who was positive with COVID and ended up spreading among the guests. It ultimately spread coronavirus to 170 people, including their workplaces and schools, and of total 8 people died of that outbreak. None of those people who passed away had attended the wedding. They were people who had contracted guests themselves. They were peripheral infections. One more example I wanted to bring up was a smaller outbreak, but no less difficult. Tony Green was a 43-year-old and is a 43-year-old in Texas. He hosted a family get-together of 5 people. The infection came to that get-together through one of them. ultimately 14 members of their family ended up getting sick, and some of them were hospitalized. 2 of them died. Tony himself was hospitalized for 3 days and was minutes away from a massive stroke because the virus had attacked his nervous system, but luckily he made it to the hospital in time. Again, that was a 43-year-old in Texas. So I think this is a good opportunity for us to remember that it can take just one person in an ideal STED environment, and that because of that, it's important for us to use our common sense and to act accordingly. And especially as a borough government, it is our job to be prepared to respond to the larger situation at hand. So for that reason, I'll be voting no. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Stanton Greger.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I definitely support what Member Kinsinger and Member Tremblay said, and just really to echo the statements by Director Hagerman. Although we're doing well and have done well here in Petersburg, and we hope that keeps up. State counts are really high, over 200 new cases a day, and this is not a time to let our guard down, and I think it'd be irresponsible for us as a borough government to remove that emergency declaration at this point. So I'll be voting no. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other input? Clerk, call the roll.
Taylor?
Yes.
Chelsea?
No.
Bob?
No.
Jeff?
No.
Dave?
No.
Jay?
No.
Mark?
No.
Thank you.
Okay, so that motion fails with a 6-1 vote with Member Norheim in favor and the rest of the Assembly opposed. That brings us to the next item under new business, Petersburg Mental Health Services Special Use Permit. Petersburg Mental Health Services has applied for a special use permit to allow for placement of a stairwell on 55 square feet of Fram Street right-of-way to access property at 100 Fram Street. The Planning Commission recommends Assembly approval. I would entertain a motion to support this request.
So moved. So moved.
A motion was made by Member Stanton Greger, and I'll take Member Kinsinger's motion as a second. Discussion.
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Member Kinsinger.
Yes, I was on Planning and Zoning when we discussed this, and it's basically what it's doing is it's solving an existing encroachment. And at the time, it's kind of a win-win for all parties involved. Salvation Army had the encroachment on their property, and they were happy to see that the stairwell was going to go in the direction that it was going to go and no longer be on their property. So I recommend that we approve this proposal.
Okay, thank you. Member Tremblay, did you have a comment? I thought there was another voice. If there's no other.
No, I did not.
Okay, sorry, hearing things. If there's no other input by the Assembly, we'll have the clerk call the roll.
Jay?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Chelsea?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, that's been passed unanimously, so Petersburg Mental Health Services will get their special use permit. That brings us to item E under new business, and that's Manager Giesbrecht's purchasing report. If I could get the particulars to come up. Member Lynn requested this agenda item to determine if the Assembly has any feedback for Manager Giesbrecht regarding his review of the borough purchasing policy as directed in the goals and objectives given to the manager during his 2019 performance evaluation. So I guess we need a motion to get this on the floor. Maybe a motion to approve the manager's recommendations. Member Lynn, do you have a motion for this?
I would let me back up just a second.
Sorry.
Is to allow the Assembly to review and accept, if they want to, the manager's proposal to change the borough purchasing policy.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's been...
I'll second it.
Okay, it was seconded by Member Norheim, so we have a motion and a second. Is there discussion? There's three parts to this. So is this something we're going to address this evening? Or is this something it's on the agenda to address it, I believe, right?
Yeah, I think, and Manager, if you would jump on there with me, what we would like to do is to review his proposal and to see where the Assembly's at. If everybody's comfortable with what he's done, then we will take it to the attorney, or he will, and Debbie will, and then come back with a formal proposal, go through the process. And this, I'm sorry, Debbie.
I'm sorry, an amendment to the ordinance, correct?
Yes, we proposed amendment to the ordinance, and he has a number of things that he struck out, changed in here that we would ask the Assembly to review, and this is based on one of the goals that several of the Assembly members have asked, to look at our borough purchasing policy and to see what we could do that would help or encourage more local business purchasing, and that's what it's intended for.
Okay. So I guess what we're looking for is just to go through the change in the language, which is everything underlined in red.
Yes.
I believe, and then see if that's acceptable to the Assembly to send to our attorney for vetting and then bring it back for official action at a future meeting?
Yes.
So that's the goal of putting this on tonight's agenda. Is there any other comments from Assembly members looking at this, the modifications to the ordinance? So if I hear no changes or modifications by the Assembly, then we'll vote to send this to the attorney?
Yes.
For approval? Yeah. Or for review? Member Lynn?
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor?
Oh, hang on, Member Mucci, Member Lynn has the floor.
I have two questions. One for the manager under item D, which is it was 4.04.070. Item D, where it talks about submittal via email, and I totally agree with that. But down later, we talk in there about if you modify your proposal, you don't want an amount on there, you want a percentage, but you're not to show the final amount. I guess I didn't understand where that was going.
Mr. Giesbrecht?
Yes, Assemblyman Lynn, I'm just trying to make sure I'm where you are. So 4.04070.
Yes.
Number is in dog?
Yes.
Okay. I'm not seeing anything about percentages in there, so I'm confused. I'm sorry.
It's on the, I think it was on the last.
It's in another section. I read it, changing it from 5% to 10% for public.
It wasn't I was disagreeing, I just didn't understand what the thinking was.
I don't see
Yeah, and I'm having a hard time finding where you're referring to it.
I'll let it go, and you know, if outside of here, if we just take a look, I wasn't, if I didn't understand it, we were trying to get somebody to bid on or to provide a bid on something, then I'm sure other folks would have the same problem. That's my only point there.
Is there currently a local preference of 5%? And I believe you suggested we changed it to 10? Somewhere in here?
Yes.
Yes,
And I agree.
Correct, and that's over in 404.050 A, where it changes, the 5 to 10%. Anyway, I'm happy to go through it and look through and see if I can find if it mentions percentages anywhere else.
Yeah, that would be fine. I only just have one other point, Mr. Mayor, and that is and that had to do with the amount. I noticed back here that under the purchasing authority, that this ordinance was written, the original ordinance was written in 2013, and the amount was, I think, $30,000. And if you just look at cost of inflation from 13 to today, you're looking at approximately $6,000 more. So I guess my point is, should be raising that, and that had to do with purchase at a sales price of $30,000 or more. Should that not be raised to something like $40,000 now or higher?
Clearly, that is up to the Assembly. I think you're speaking to 4.04040A.
Yes.
Which says purchases at a sales price of $30,000 or more, but less than $150,000 upon Assembly resolution is set up. These are saying, competitive bidding or request for proposals will not be needed for under that. So again, that's up to the Assembly. I mean, you're right. Inflation, and especially on projects, has gone up significantly. But it's what you're comfortable doing.
So before we send this to the attorney, then if someone wanted to change that amount, they would have to make a motion to amend this section 44020C to raise that limit. So if someone wants to do that, and we could vote on it, or we could just send it as it is and change it later. So is there any other member? Mucci, did you have a comment?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm all for sending that to the city attorney and getting her to look it over and making sure it's the way it's supposed to be. And I'm all for changing that $30,000 to $35,000 or $40,000. But I think the first step is getting it to the city attorney. And once we get it back from her, we can certainly change those numbers there on Part A of that. So I think it's a good idea to move it forward. Thank you.
Okay, so if there's no other discussion by the Assembly, I'll ask the clerk to call the roll to send this to the attorney for review. Clerk Thompson?
Dave?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Chelsea?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, that passes unanimously. We'll wait to see what the attorney has to say. Excuse me. Next item under new business is F, State Mandate 10, Airport Support Contract Extension Number 2. I.C. Hagerman requests Assembly approval to extend the State Mandate 10 Airport Support Contract through December 31st, 2020. Suggested motion. I move to approve Amendment Number 2 of the State of Alaska Contract CO620-523 to extend greetings /screening and testing services at the James A. Johnson Airport to December 31st, 2020, for a total payment to the Borough of $423,725, and to amend the Memorandum of Agreement with the Petersburg Medical Center to reflect the extension and setting a not-to-exceed value of the Memorandum of Agreement at $325,400. I would entertain a motion to support this extension.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, motion's been made by Member Mucci, I believe, and seconded by Member Kinsinger. Discussion.
So, Mr. Mayor, I have a question.
Member Mucci.
Yeah, thank you. The memorandum of understanding says $325,400, and the payment to the borough is $423. Is there a reason for that discrepancy, or am I missing something here?
Maybe Mr. Hagerman or the manager can explain it, but I would assume that the borough keeps the balance.
Mr. Mayor, this is Carl.
Mr. Hagerman.
Thank you. That is correct. The total contract value is $423,000. The medical center only does the testing portion of the work at the airport. The borough is responsible for the greeting and screening services, and so the remainder of that, above the $325,000 that goes to the hospital for their service, is paid to the borough directly.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that explanation, Member Hagan. Is there any more discussion on this request for extension of the airport screening? Clerk, call the roll.
Please, Mr. Mayor.
Oh, yeah, Member Stanton Gregor, sorry.
No, you're all right. Just briefly, I mean, as I discussed earlier today on the radio, the airport is our hub for people coming and going from the community, and this is, approving this, I think, is, very critical to keeping our community as safe as possible, as much as we can, in terms of mitigating risk, in terms of COVID. So I'll definitely be voting yes. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Is there any other input from Assembly before I ask the clerk to call the roll? Hearing none, will the clerk please call the roll?
Jeff?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
Chelsea?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, so the extension is approved unanimously. Next item on the agenda is advisory board letters of interest. We'll do the Parks and Rec advisory board first. We have two people on the board. It's a 5-person board. Brian Richards was elected. His name was on the ballot, and then there was a write-in. Help me, Ms. Thompson, with the name.
Stephanie Hayes.
Stephanie Hayes. So those two are on the board. We need to seat 3 people. And there are 3 letters of interest listed on the agenda, but there are also 2 letters of interest, one from Desi Burrell and one from
Heidi
Cabral. So those are the 5 candidates, and I would like to appoint to one of the 3 seats Desi Burrell. And if we have consent from the Assembly, that will leave us with 2 positions. So do we need to take a vote, or all those in favor of Desi Burrell being placed on the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board, say aye.
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 Are there any opposed? Okay, I believe, I didn't hear somebody, but, so Desi Burrell will be the 3rd person on the Parks and Rec Advisory Board. And then we had a letter from G. Kravitz, who's a letter of interest, who is a Coast Guard person in town, and they use the pool and the facility quite regularly and extensively. I think it'd be nice to have someone from that entity on the board. So I would like to appoint, let me get to the letter here, sorry for my slow computer work. Garrett Kravitz to the Parks and Rec Assembly, Parks and Rec Advisory Board. Is there any opposition to that, or I'm going to ask for all those in favor, say aye.
Mr. Mayor?
Aye.
Oh, okay, Member Tremblay?
Opposition.
Okay, well,
I was
let's
thinking,
Member
because
Tremblay.
2 of the other members, is this allowed? Am I able to talk right now? I'm not sure.
Well, let's do a voice vote. Let's do a voice vote then. And if you have comments on my appointment, then what is your input?
Well, Mr. Mayor, you had asked if there was opposition and before the vote, and so I was voicing my opposition.
Okay, thank you. I understand that, but last time we did everybody say aye for the first appointment, and no one objected, but there was only 5 ayes that the clerk heard. So I think after your, and anybody else's input onto my proposed appointment, we'll do a voice vote. Sorry. Okay, thank you. You have the floor.
Okay, thank you. My thinking was, I would like to personally nominate Heidi Cabral and Melina Marvin. Ms. Marvin has been serving on the board already, but missed getting her packet in by just a few minutes. And I think given it's newly formed, having some form of continuity, such as it could be, would be very helpful. And Ms. Cabral, having been a prior employee of Parks and Rec, I thought would be helpful given the level of turnover and bringing in that institutional knowledge. I thought would be helpful to the board. So that was my reason for opposition, with full recognition of both Mr. Wilkinson and Mr. Kravitz for their letters as well, because I think that they are both very interested in serving our community, and we do have other boards with seat availability, so I would encourage them to pursue those personally. But that was just the basis of my opposition personally.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your input. So I have one question of Clerk Thompson. Is this the proper procedure for the mayor to appoint with approval of the assembly?
It is, yes. Code says that the mayor is able to make appointments with approval of the assembly.
Okay, and so I think this is the best way to do it.
Yes.
I'll appoint and we'll vote.
Thank you kindly.
Member Stanton Greger?
No, sir, just thanking Charmaine. I got cut off and rejoined the meeting.
Oh, okay. Nice. Didn't know you were gone. Glad you're back. Okay, so you know where we're at here, Member Stanton Greger?
Nope, not from the last minute, but it's all good.
Okay, well, we have appointed Desi Burrell as the third person to the Parks and Rec Advisory Board. I have made a move to appoint Garrett, I believe is his name,
yes,
Kravitz, to the Parks and Recreation Board. And this time, since there was a little confusion the last time when I asked people to say aye, we're going to do a voice vote. And then if it doesn't get 4 votes, then we'll move to the next person on the list. So, does that make sense?
Sounds good. Thanks for the clarification.
Okay. So this is a vote for Garrett Kravitz to be on the Parks and Rec Advisory Board. Clerk, call the names of the assembly members, please.
Mark?
Yes.
Chelsea?
No.
Taylor?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Okay, so Garrett Kravitz is the 4th of 5 on the Parks and Rec Advisory Board. And with that being said, we have one more person. I would like to appoint Melina Marvin to the Parks and Rec Advisory Board. Any comments? Clerk, do the voice call.
Chelsea?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Okay, Melina Marvin is the 5th person on that 5-person board, and thanks everybody for putting their names in. It's nice to see interest in these boards. So that takes us to the Ports and Harbor Advisory Board. I believe there's one vacancy on there, and we have a letter from Don Spiegelmeyer, who was formerly on the Harbor Board and didn't get his letter quite in time, or his signature page in time to be on the ballot, but he expresses interest in a letter to be appointed to the Harbor Port Advisory Board, excuse me. So I would like to appoint Don Spiegelmeyer to the Harbor Board. So is there any comments? Or if not, I'll just have the clerk do the voice count. Clerk
Chelsea?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yep. You bet.
Bob?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Spiegelmeyer, for putting your name back in. Communications, received since October 1st. There are 4 listed, and then I mentioned the one in the mayor's report that we will see on our next meeting from Alaska Airlines. But the first one is from DNR, and it's a notice about land sale. So this is on our website. I just thought I'd give a little bit more detail on what that communication was about. And then another communication was from the Division of Forestry, Southern Southeast area, and it's a proposed timber sale on Tuxacan Island. And so if anybody's interested, it's on the website. You could look further into that. Then we had a letter from Corey Peterson supporting the passage of 2019, that ordinance. And there was one other response to me from Department of Education and Early Development about class counts. So that is information, communications that's available to the public if you want to look at our website. Is there any other communications that Assembly members have to add to the list? Okay, hearing none. Assembly discussion items. A, and we have 2 that we added to this list, but we'll start with A, the one that was listed, and strategic plans for the Assembly, and Member Mucci requested this discussion item, so Member Mucci, you can start off the discussion.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. You know, I know we have the comprehensive plan and the waterfront master plan, and we have these plans that kind of drive the community. I just wanted to get this out here for discussion to see if there was the possibility that the Assembly wanted to kind of get together and talk about a strategic plan for the Assembly about where we're headed here in the next couple of years. I know it's hard to look down too far away, but just to start a discussion, I don't know how it's all going to end up, but at least start a discussion about what the Assembly wants to do with itself over the next 2 to 3 years. 5 years would be a long time, but just for the next couple of years, and maybe there's no interest in it, but I just wanted to throw it out there to see if there was. So that's all. That's why it's there. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Excuse me, Member Mucci. And then another one that was added to the agenda was by Member Mucci was to discuss. Oh, Member Norheim. Excuse me, Member Norheim, you have a discussion?
Well, I had a question of the strategic, like, what exactly does Member Mucci mean by strategic plans in regards to what direction he would like the Assembly to go to? Because that was, I don't track what he was getting at.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, there are certain things that Assembly members probably ran for office for, other than the big money. But I was just curious if we wanted to have a work session or maybe some type of informal conversation about what was important to Assembly members, so that we could make sure that we could address some of those concerns and see if there was any merit to moving forward with some of the interests or concerns that Assembly members had. I know what some of my interests are, but unless we're voting on a specific issue, I'm not really sure what Member Tremblay, what's important to her, or you, Mr. Mayor, what's important, and I'm just trying to figure out if we can work more cohesively to move forward in a positive direction. So nothing specific to Member Norheim, but just kind of the big picture of where the borough's headed here over the next couple of years. That's all.
Mr. Mayor?
Okay, Member Tremblay, sorry.
Yeah, thank you. I love this idea. I love a good strategic plan. We did it 2 different times that I was a part of with the library board. They had a facilitator come, and they had the library board join with the library staff, and I found it a really compelling exercise to bring a group of voices together in a non-contentious manner, and then also a non-reactive manner. It's you come together and you get to talk about the overall things that you are aiming to accomplish together and what kind of proactive goals you're trying to accomplish. And that's kind of us as an assembly, because I feel like a lot of times we talk about that in relation to the manager specifically, which we are a manager-strong system. But anyway, so I like this idea. Thank you for bringing it up, Assemblyman Benucci. I find it a nice way to, instead of just being in full reaction mode all the time, being able to think proactively about what we can do in our role as assembly members. And yeah, so I'm open to that as a thought. Of course, free time for many of us is elusive during the season, but if we find the right time and place, I think it could be a really great exercise in easing communication and helping us work together wherever possible, because I feel like we owe the community that.
Okay, any other comments in regards to the strategic planning by the Assembly? One thing I would like to interject is one thing we have to be careful of is anytime you've got over 3 Assembly members discussing something that you might take action on, it, you have to have a public meeting, so we have to keep that in mind. So maybe the way to approach this, all of us involved legally, we would have to bring it to the Assembly, as a direction, or that's just a thought that I had. So not opposed to the idea totally, but we have to be careful. So is there any more comments on this discussion item, strategic plans for the Assembly? Okay, that brings
Mr. Mayor, I agree with your Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Member Kinsinger.
Yes, I think it's a good idea. I understand your concerns, but I think we can construct it in a fashion that it's an open meeting and that the public can also maybe not participate, but at least listen to.
Okay, thank you. Yes.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I'll just kind of continue push it forward a little bit and see where we end up. Maybe I'll have a little bit more information at the November 2nd meeting. But yeah, I'll just kind of continue to push it forward a little bit and see if we can get some traction and try and fill it in a little bit. And we'll just continue on here. Yeah, thank you. I appreciate the comments.
Okay, that brings us to one of the added items. It's 17B, and Member Mucci asked for this to be added to the agenda, and it's a discussion on bears.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. We've probably all seen the email about the bears in town, and I've been harping on bears here for the last several weeks. And with Halloween coming up and bears in people's windows, I've got this nagging fear of something bad happening on Halloween here. But I'm going to bring up at the next meeting our ordinance regarding bears and citations and stuff, and see if we can put some teeth into it and at least make it a little bit more enforceable. I mean, the garbage thing, it's kind of a personal thing. We've harped on it before about people should just kind of take care of their garbage. I understand that some people can't, and there's certain, prohibitions about storing your garbage cans in your garage and stuff. But, we should be, this is something that we deal with every year, and other than retrofitting garbage cans at great expense, I think we can do better here. I did talk to the wildlife biologist today, Frank Robbins, and he sent me this text here earlier this afternoon. It says, "Hey Jeff, this is Frank from Fish and Game. Our educational specialist and I will be doing a bear safety Zoom meeting next Wednesday for Petersburg residents. They will advertise on Facebook, Petersburg Buy-Seller Trade, and I'm just encouraging folks to kind of listen in." He also mentioned the possibility of doing some public service announcements for folks to a little bit better bear education. I think we all have some bear education, but I think we're lacking more public service announcements. And I want to thank Frank for taking the steps here to make it a little bit better here. So yeah, I'm appreciative of that, and I'll bring that bear ordinance up here, or the garbage ordinance up at the next meeting. Thank you.
Any input from other Assembly members on this discussion item? Member Norheim.
In relation to the bears, I had spoken to one of the troopers. I can't remember his name. He's the newer trooper in town. And he had said, you are not allowed to shoot the bears. This should be obvious to everybody. But if you are in fear for your life, so say the bear's trying to get in your window, that's probably an appropriate time. That's my opinion, not the opinion of the trooper. And I think people should keep that in mind. You don't just get to shoot the bear because it's on your property. But if you are in fear for your life, then, I mean, I would. If I was concerned for my life, then yes. But you don't just get to shoot them because they're on your lawn.
Okay, any other comments on the bear discussion item? Okay, I'm not hearing any. And Member Tremblay added item 17C, and I didn't quite get the language to it, but it's something about assembly participation and partisanship.
Partisanship policy.
Campaigns, a partisanship policy. So, Member Tremblay, you brought it up. What was your discussion?
Yeah, I just wanted to bring it up since it came up during the Borough Business Radio Hour. The question was relating to a member of our body being in an ad for a politician, and the question was whether or not that was allowed. And I offered my experience of inquiring about whether I was able to take the job that I have with the campaign. And just so everyone knows, the answer is yes. The borough employees and elected officials can endorse candidates and take positions. The only exception is Steve, who is a member of the International City Managers Association, which is part of it's part of his code of ethics as a borough manager that he is not able to take a position. But otherwise, assembly members are, with the knowledge that we are operating as individuals in the public space of politics as private individuals. And so I just wanted to say that at a meeting, since that's different than saying it on a radio thing. And I just wanted to check with Steve about if there was any other clarifications or anything that he would add to that.
Okay, thank you.
Through the mayor,
Mr. Giesbert.
No problem. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Some member Tremblay, you nailed it perfectly. Elected officials, employees are all free to engage in the political process, and there is no restriction on that. The only restriction, as you mentioned, would be do not represent yourself as the borough assembly or borough employees. You are representing yourself in those instances. And as you mentioned, I do not get involved as part of the code of ethics of the ICMA group. So anyway, you nailed it.
Okay, thank you, Steve.
Okay, thank you. And again, this was a topic of conversation in case anybody else had any thoughts, but I just wanted to bring it up.
Any other input on that discussion item? Okay, seeing none, didn't we have another item on the agenda that's not here?
Yes, Mayor Jensen.
Assembly comments?
Yes, I accidentally left off assembly comments and recognitions. I apologize.
Right. So let's start with recognitions. Are there any recognitions?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor.
Member Michi.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to thank all the people that participated and volunteered up at the flu shot, drive-through flu shot last Saturday. It was pretty interesting. You know, I want a special shout out to the Coast Guard guys. There were like 5 or 6 Coast Guard members, active duty Coast Guard guys who were up there helping out. It was cool to see them there. Like I think somebody said there were 729 shots. I think it's down a couple from last year. But yeah, it was really interesting to see how it all worked. And I just want to thank all the people who had a part in making it happen. I think it went really well. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other recognitions by Assembly members?
Yes, please, Mr. Mayor.
Member Stan Greger.
Yeah, I just wanted to a two-part thank you. One huge one to all of the volunteers or people who agreed to help with our local election during this time. Thank you to all of you for doing your jobs admirably. And then, of course, a huge thank you to all of the registered voters of Petersburg who participated in our election. That's democracy at its best. We don't have to like or dislike the outcome, but we need to turn out and vote. So it's a huge thank you to all citizens who turned out to vote. Much appreciated.
Okay, any other member Norheim has a recognition?
Yeah, I just wanted to thank not just the officers at the fire department, but the whole fire department, but mostly the officers. They always thank us for showing up when we go to calls and whatnot, so I figured I'm up here. I'd say thank you guys for being in charge.
All right, nice recognition. Any other recognitions? Hearing none?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I have one more.
Okay, Member Mucci.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to thank Member Brandy Morrell for her time on the Assembly. It takes a lot of time and effort to work well at the Assembly level here, and I just want to thank her for her time and all her efforts that she put in on the Assembly. That's all. Thank you.
Are there any other recognitions? If not, it's time for Assembly comments. Assembly member comments. Are there any comments by Assembly members on topics that are near and dear to you? Member Lynn?
Well, I don't know if it's near and dear. I'd like to go back to the fire we recently had there. I would encourage that we get an outside consultant. I agree with Steve, is that we really do need to look at that system in whole. That's been there for, 20 plus years. Easy. We don't meet code, I'm absolutely sure of that. And I had a chance to go back and look at what the whole SEPA grid did from that event, and it did affect the grid all the way to Ketchikan. And luckily, everything worked as it was supposed to on that end. We had a little bit of a brownout here, but it still worked. And so but if we're going to put this back together, I think we need to do it in the best way we possibly can. And if it takes longer, I'm sorry, that's going to take longer. The only other thing I'd say is I agree with Steve, is that I've been told by a number of folks now that, because of the COVID situation, the supply line is rather weak on certain things, and we're looking at very special items here. And so I would encourage, the public's just going to have to bear with us. We'll move as fast as we can, but it's going to take some time, and hopefully we're lucky to have the parts are available. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other Assembly member comments?
Yes, I have.
No, Mr. Mayor, I just want to collaborate with Bob there. When I looked at that room there, and when somebody has to go into a building that's either on fire or smoky to turn the power off, there's a really big safety issue there. And like Bob said, that the code has changed probably about 7 times since it was originally built. So yeah, it's going to take some time, and I'm sure we'll get all kinds of updates from Steve and Carl, and they'll keep us in the loop, and I plan to keep the community in the loop. So yeah, it's going to take some time.
Member Tremblay?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Thank you. This brings me to a comment/recognition of the Parks and Rec employees who are putting up with so much. Thank you for all your work, and we see you and appreciate you dealing with all these circumstances. Wow. So thank you. I can't say enough about how much work they've been putting in for the community, and how many larger things just seem to keep getting in the way of what they're trying to do, which is provide a nice space for our community members. So thank you for all your work, and we're going to try to get some answers for you here soon.
Okay, any other Assembly member comments? I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
I hear no opposition. The meeting is adjourned at 7:50.
Thank you, everyone.